It's okay if you're wondering, is the COVID-19 vaccine safe for people like me? And when you're ready, here's your answer. It was tested by adult volunteers of different ages, races, genders, ethnicities, and health conditions. Tens of thousands of people, a group as diverse as California itself. And thanks to them, we know the vaccine is safe. Let's get you there. Let's get to immunity. Learn more at vaccinateall58.com or call 833-422-4255. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
The best summer plans start at Toyota's We Make It Easy sales event. Right now, you can get great savings on some of our most popular models, like $1,000 factory cash back on a stylish and reliable Corolla. Plus, there are new Toyotas arriving daily, from fuel-efficient hybrids and versatile SUVs to our legendary trucks. Must take delivery from model year 2021 new car dealer stock by midnight July 6th. We make it easy. Toyota, let's go places.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the program. Well, it is Mount Everest season, and the summit push is on. I'd like to give a shout out to some of my friends on the mountain right now, especially those who are climbing with Makalu Extreme Treks. They reached the summit. Everyone got down safe. Everyone's going home to their families. I call that, my friends, a successful expedition. Now, Nepal is dealing with some serious COVID issues as of now, and that's a whole other issue, right? But what's going on up at Everest and with the summits occurring, it's pretty awesome stuff for those of us who are into mountaineering. So I just wanted to take a second to give some of my friends up there who are going to be returning home soon now a shout out. Oksana, the team, everybody. Job well done, folks. Job well done indeed. All right, on to our subject. Now, we're going to jump back into the Palm Beach Post today, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how Jeffrey Epstein's wealth and influence was one of the hurdles that the local law officials couldn't overcome when trying to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein. We talked a little bit about this in the opinion piece from the Palm Beach Post yesterday, and this is another article that goes straight to the heart of the situation. So let's jump into this article from the Palm Beach Post, and let's see what the author, Jane Musgrave, has to say. Headline: Local law officials couldn't get past Jeffrey Epstein's wealth, probe reveals. And it's sad but true, right? We don't need an article to tell us that. We don't need an insider or a whistleblower or anything like that to tell us that Jeffrey Epstein's wealth was a huge impediment for these survivors getting justice. Palm Beach County State Attorney Barry Krischer couldn't get past the notion that Jeffrey Epstein showered dozens of teens he molested with money and gifts, which the prosecutor believed turned girls as young as 14 into prostitutes. Look, there's no such thing as a 14-year-old prostitute, all right? That's called a child sex worker who's being abused and manipulated into that situation. You know, I don't even understand how they can look themselves in the mirror with this sort of narrative. There's no way, no how anyone's going to convince me, I don't care what gifts are exchanged, that a 14-year-old knew exactly what was going on here with a 52-year-old man. Look, we're not talking about a 14-year-old with an 18-year-old, a freshman with a senior, right? That's different. There'd be an argument to be had there. We all know dudes are stupid as hell. Guys don't mature till they're, 30 or something. But this isn't any of that. This isn't some, high school senior who is with some freshmen in high school. This is a very powerful, very wealthy man who had the core four underneath him to help groom these girls and prepare them for his abuse. Point blank, period. That's what was occurring. And Barry Krischer, the state prosecutors, and all the other bitch-ass punks who were involved down there knew what was occurring, and they chose to look the other way because Epstein and his powerful attorneys flexed on these boys. So, rather than charge the self-described financier, pedophile, with child molestation as Palm Beach police wanted, he charged Epstein with 2 counts of solicitation of prostitution. And that right there, folks, launched it all into orbit, right? Got everything moving for Epstein to refurbish his image once he got out of quote-unquote jail. Oh, it was only, look, I was soliciting a prostitute. Come on, I was just a John, guys. Well, it happens. Sometimes a guy has an urge and a guy has a need and he goes to get himself a prostitute. That's basically what those charges say, right? And as a society, we look at it and we're like, you stupid asshole. Out there trying to go pick up a prostitute and you get nailed, you dumb moron. And that's usually the end of it, right? So that's why they were shooting for a prostitution charge and not the other charges. Because these other charges, well, us, society, we look at them and we look and see a monster, okay? Not a guy who made a mistake. And that's the image we should get when looking at Jeffrey Epstein. And that is the image that they hid with these silly-ass, cheap-ass, weak-ass charges that they slapped on him in Florida. Top county sheriff's officials couldn't get over Epstein's enormous wealth, which they believed would allow him to either bribe fellow inmates or become a target of extortion, creating a security risk in the jail. So stupid. That's their excuse, huh? So you had all of these years to come up with an excuse for why you gave this dude this kind of deal, and that's what you came up with? Oh, the security at the jail. Give me a break. Put this guy in his own cell, lock the key, leave him in there for 23 hours a day, just like they do with the Aryan Brotherhood or the Mexican Mafia or anyone else who might be a problem in jail. This is all BS, folks. This narrative right here, all trash. So, they decided to give him his own private television and house him in an unlocked cell in the county stockade, which he was eventually allowed to leave for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just before his sentence was up, he was even allowed to spend 2 hours a day at his Palm Beach mansion. Why not? Return to the scene of the crime and all, head back home. Must be nice to be Jeffrey F. Epstein, huh? Meanwhile, back in reality, the rest of us, nobody's getting that kind of deal. Go ahead and commit a crime and see if you get that kind of deal. Go ahead and sell crack and see if you get that kind of deal. But if you traffic human beings and basically enslave human beings, no big deal. We're going to hook you up, bro. You just hang out in the stockade, got your own cell, got yourself a TV. We'll let you go out 14 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Hell, you can even go to your house for a couple hours a day. Does that sound like justice to you? Does that sound like a deterrent from anyone doing this ever again? And you wonder why Jeffrey Epstein continued on his path. The findings, the product of a nearly 2-year investigation by the state's top law enforcement agency, confirmed Epstein was treated far differently from other, less wealthy people ensnared by the criminal justice system. Yeah, no shit he was. But there was no laws broken. It was just improper. These people need to be reined in. They have unchecked powers. And it is obviously a detriment to the rest of us. However, in lengthy reports released this week, investigators for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement said no laws were broken. Destroyed sheriff's records, conflicting memories, the death of a key witness, and the refusal of some of Epstein's young survivors to talk hampered the investigation that was ordered by Governor Ron DeSantis, FDLE agents said. Again, look, kudos for initiating the investigation, but did anyone really think that we were going to get the answers that we were looking for here when it's the state once again investigating themselves? Why is it always these people, these entities, these groups that are called on the carpet are allowed to investigate themselves? There needs to be some sort of independent investigation done. And again, I would call for the federal government to initiate that investigation, but does anyone have any confidence in anything that they're doing at this point? They can't even protect critical infrastructure from cyber hackers. But even if additional information surfaces, more than a decade has passed since Epstein's lurid activities exploded into public view. Any crime they might uncover would be barred by the statutes of limitations, they said. And that was always the plan, right? Kick the ball down the court, kick the can down the court long enough for the statute of limitations to kick in and make it all a moot point. So that they can ride off into the sunset in their Bugatti with the drop top down and both middle fingers up. Like they always do, right? The bad guys always riding off into the sunset in America. Frankly, I'm tired of it. I'm really, really tired of it. And all of these federal agencies, the FBI, these prosecutors who are supposed to make sure shit like this doesn't happen, well, they're all in on it. People talk about how corrupt places like Mexico is and blah, blah. Man, it's corrupt here too. You really think, to go on a bit of a different subject for a moment, do you really think the Sackler family over at Purdue Pharma, should have only been slapped with what they were slapped with? If they didn't have all of those political connections that they had, all of those powerful lawyers working for them, you really think they would have been able to slither out of that shit? The whole entire system is corrupt. It's about who you know and how much money you're paying your attorneys, because you're not only paying for them to defend you, you're paying for their political clout. The conclusions further inflame those who believe the serial child molester received a gift from Krischer and the inexplicably cushy treatment from the sheriff's office. Yeah, I'll be the first to say this shit enraged me. Obviously, I don't speak for anybody else, but personally speaking, this kind of stuff really gets me launched into orbit and fired up. Because they're basically just lying to us. We know that it was more than just people being ignorant. These people were swayed by Epstein's power, his influence, and the extreme power of his legal team. Look, think about being a state prosecutor or a federal prosecutor here. You don't think they go over their heads? You don't think anyone went to Mukasey? Stop it. Stop it right now. Attorney Jack Scarola, who represented some of Epstein's victims, called the report a whitewash. Further, he said the state's agency's conclusions that it was hamstrung by expired statutes of limitations was disingenuous. Yeah, that's their built-in, right? They always have to have their built-in safety valve, their firewall. Oh, well, we can't give you information about this because it's an ongoing investigation. And then in a situation like this, oh, well, there was some impropriety, but no crimes were committed. And even if they were, well, the statute of limitations would have been passed already. And once again, they begin the sweeping under the rug. But this time, they're not going to get away with it. There are too many people who are interested in this case, in the independent media and elsewhere. They're not going to be able to kick the can down the road this time, all right? Maxwell's going to trial, shit's going to come out, and there's a long time between now and November, folks. Who knows what else is coming down the pipe? That was a foregone conclusion, he said, noting that Epstein, who is now dead, was arrested and incarcerated more than 15 years ago. No answers for why Jeffrey Epstein got a slap on the wrist. U.S. Representative Lois Frankel, who has pushed for a congressional investigation into how Epstein's case was handled by both state and federal prosecutors, voiced similar views. I mean, is anybody going to really push for these investigations? I mean, stand up in conference and say to their colleagues, look, I'm going to make sure that I stop the next bill dead in its tracks unless we have a hearing on Epstein. It's as simple as that. If one of these people on these strong committees would do that, then we'd get the hearings. But like usual, they do not care. It's all lip service. Until I actually see people up in front of Congress being sworn in under oath and shit, I'll look at it as lip service. Once again, Jeffrey Epstein survivors get no answers for why he got a slap on the wrist for sexually abusing multiple young girls, said Frankel, a West Palm Beach Democrat. The finding of no criminal conduct on the part of law enforcement in the handling of Epstein's case is a diversion from finding the truth. Hallelujah, Lois Frankel. And if you're going to be the lady who is going to spearhead this and get investigations, I will surely support you. Because, folks, we need answers here. All we get are more questions. All we get is more obfuscation. It's time we get some truth. Attorney Michael Dolce, a sexual abuse survivor who specializes in child molestation cases, said he was astounded by the conclusions drawn by state agents. I think it's inherently preposterous to say that there was no preferential treatment to Mr. Epstein based on his wealth, he said. I've never seen a case of preferential treatment on this level, particularly when it involved crimes against children. The only difference is his wealth. Yeah, no shit. That's the real privilege, folks. You know, they talk about this privilege and this person has more privilege than that person, and then they have the middle class and the lower middle class arguing about who is more privileged or not. Bro, you know who's privileged? People like Epstein. The rest of us are doing the same thing as the neighbor that we have next door. Up every morning, tying our shoes, heading out to work, trying to provide for our families because ketchup sandwiches are not an option. Meanwhile, these scumbags don't have to do shit but sit around, steal, get involved in money laundering, and let me add, molest children as well. But yet they're the ones who catch the great deals. They're the ones who are getting all kinds of hooked up, making sure they don't go to jail. That's privilege, folks, and that comes with money and wealth. While refusing to find fault with either Krischer or the sheriff's office, investigators acknowledged that unusual decisions were made. The case was ultimately settled by a rare and once secret non-prosecution agreement crafted by federal prosecutors and endorsed by Krischer. And again, it goes back to the heart of the conversation. Sure, Acosta's a scumbag and needs to be outed. Sure, Krischer's a scumbag and he needs to be outed. How come none of these articles ever mention Mukasey? I mean, we're not going to go all the way to the top here? We're going to act like this decision was made in a vacuum by a lowly state prosecutor, huh? Okay. 3 times during their analysis of the sheriff's office handling of Epstein, FDLE agents said the tycoon received differential treatment compared to other inmates. But they cushioned their words, saying the decisions were justified. Of course they did. This was not about finding what occurred here, folks. This was about refurbishing the image of the state prosecutors of Florida. That's what it's always about. Oh, you think it's about justice? It's all political theater at all times with all of these people. And that's the environment that we find ourselves in with politicians in general. For instance, Epstein was moved from the jail to the stockade because sheriff's officials worried about the safety of housing him in an open cell block. Not only could he bribe or be extorted by fellow inmates, but they said they worried they couldn't protect him if angry friends of his accusers were housed in the same area of the jail, investigators wrote. You don't have to just worry about friends of the accusers. Let me be very clear. Inmates have a very special code of their own. And while the people that are housed in these jails and prisons are usually the worst of the worst, the very bottom rung is reserved for people who hurt women and children. And that is where Epstein would find himself. That said, with his money, he could have bought protection for himself if he would have ended up in general population. He could have bought protection from some group like the Aryan Brotherhood, plenty of routes that he could have went. And they're not wrong saying he would have been extorted. He would have been. And he probably would have been assaulted at some point and maybe even killed. That is not BS. That's not hyperbole. That's just the facts of the matter when it comes to prison in America and these sorts of charges. So I could see them moving him to that stockade, right? But not for him to leave all them hours. I would have put him in that cell for 23 hours a day. You get out 1 hour a day for a little exercise, get your shower time, whatever that is. And that's the end of it, bro. You're eating in that jail cell. You're working out in that jail cell. That 8x10 box, that's your whole life from now on. Enjoy. No stockades. No going out during the day while you're an inmate. None of that shit. When they moved Epstein to the stockade, sheriff's officials said they were obligated to give him the same privileges he would have had in jail. TV installed for Jeffrey Epstein to mimic conditions for other inmates. Other inmates at the stockade were locked in their cells for disciplinary reasons. But since Epstein was there for his own safety, sheriff's officials said they decided to keep the door of Epstein's cell open so he could wander around as he would have been able to in the jail. Oh yeah, that's exactly what you want to do. Just let him wander around all he wants. Go ahead, Jeffrey, you have run of the keep. It's yours, buddy. Should have just given him the keys to all the other cells, too, so he can go around and be the king of Siam like usual. Nothing wrong here, folks. Nothing to see. I wonder if Khalif Browder would have been afforded the same kind of stay in this stockade. Somehow, I don't think so. They also installed the television to mimic jail conditions. It was turned away from other prisoners who weren't allowed to watch TV, investigators said. Oh my, so this guy's in the stockade. All of these other inmates are in there for discipline reasons, right? None of them are allowed to watch TV, but Epstein's bitch ass is sitting there watching The View. It's almost like in Law Abiding Citizen when Gerard Butler's character asks for the bed, the steak, and then he stabs his inmate, his cellmate with the steak bone. This is also ludicrous. I don't know how any governing body can look at this and say, yeah, everything's cool. Everything was above board here. Likewise, while federal prosecutors chafed at the decision to give Epstein work release, investigators said he was entitled to leave the jail to work at his nonprofit Florida Science Foundation. Must be nice. Must be nice, huh? In there for child sex trafficking. Good. Get yourself a little bit of a day trip, old Jeffy. As part of his plea deal, he was forced to register as a sex offender. But at the time, departmental policy didn't bar sex offenders from work release, investigators said. Yeah, had to file as a sex offender everywhere but New Mexico. It was just a coincidence that he put that house in Zorro, by the way. Just a coincidence. He had no idea that he wouldn't have to register there as a sex offender or anything. It should be noted that a review of PBSO records identified 3 instances in which inmates were authorized to participate in the work release program who, like Epstein, were designated sexual offenders, FDLE agents wrote. That's the problem, all right? The law was the problem. Epstein or those other 3 should have never been granted work release as sex offenders. And anybody who says or thinks otherwise is obviously suffering from a critically damaging blow to the head. Other inmates were also allowed to leave the jail to go to work for long periods. The decision to allow Epstein to work from home during the last 2 months of 13 months he served was also a privilege granted to other inmates, investigators said. Well, that's fine and well, and I think it should be a case-by-case basis, right? I'm not completely against a work release for inmates. You know, you're in there for some... Look, man, you guys should all know how I feel by now about the prison system. I'm all about rehabilitation, and I am all about fixing our prison systems. But that said, no child molester, no toucher, no diddler should ever be given work release. Work release did not prohibit an individual who was self-employed or who was the owner of a business to participate in the program, investigators wrote. inmates were eligible to participate in work release even if their office was at their personal residence. Again, not against any of that, but it has to be applied correctly. Guys like Epstein should never be granted that waiver. Sheriff Rick Bradshaw, who asked DeSantis to order the investigation, isn't mentioned in the report. However, his now retired right-hand man, Chief Deputy Michael Gager, defended the agency's actions. The chief reiterated that the decisions were made in order to ensure Epstein's safety as an inmate in their custody, investigators wrote. So you know they're going to latch onto the whole safety thing, right? Considering how Epstein ended up. So they'll use that to their advantage here by putting it in there. Well, we had him like that because of his safety. And as you can see by what occurred in New York, we did the right thing. It's basically what they're trying to say. The chief, who described Epstein as a model prisoner in a video release shortly after the money manager's 2019 arrest on child sex trafficking charges in New York, told the Palm Beach Post that the PBSO was bound by Epstein's plea agreement. And once again, the plea agreement rears its ugly head. That thing is the biggest impediment when it comes to finding justice in this case that we have ever come across. And the sick, twisted 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and their horrid decision-making has made things even more difficult. It said Epstein, the NPA, would receive the benefits and privileges of all other inmates. To violate this would place us in a position of great liability and in violation of our policies, accreditation standards, and court precedent, the chief said in a statement. To deny him a television would violate his civil rights as an inmate, no matter his heinous crimes. To keep him locked in a cell and kept in isolation would violate, again, his civil rights. No, I don't believe that. Sorry. There are plenty of people who are in jail, prison, that are in their cells for 23 hours a day. You would have to go and get the waiver. You'd have to do some legwork. You'd have to fight against his high-powered attorneys, but it's doable. The thing is, the prosecutors in the state, they didn't have the backbone for it. Point blank, period. They were cowards, they were scoundrels, and in effect, they played a part in any girl being abused after this first arrest. So have fun sleeping at night.
Made plans for summer childcare yet? If not, don't worry. Care.com can help. At Care.com, you can find trusted, reliable, and affordable sitters near you with flexibility that fits your summer plans. And because the best decisions are made with care, 100% of caregivers who use Care.com have been background checked with CareCheck, a key first step for families to make strong hiring decisions. This summer, get help with activities, tutoring, pickups, drop-offs, and more. Sign up now at Care.com.
FDL agents also said they could find no evidence that Epstein had sex with two women while working at his downtown office or while he was at home. Two women, who declined to talk to investigators, filed suit in New York City, claiming they were flown to West Palm Beach by Epstein associates with the promise of working for his Florida Science Foundation. Now, again, how many situations do we have here? Why these women wouldn't speak to the investigators? I don't know. I have no idea. Do I wish they would have? Yeah, probably. But there's a lot that goes into it. Probably comes down to the fact that they don't trust what's going on in Florida or the prosecutors down there. We all know Florida's a shit show. We all know when people are looking to get involved in crimes, off to Florida they go. Oh, you want to open up a pill mill? Florida it is. You want to start transporting some cocaine maybe? Oh, let's hit that. Let's go to Florida. So it doesn't shock me that all of this shit went on in Florida. And we all know that West Palm Beach is absolutely corrupt. Off-duty deputy guards paid after Epstein paid PBSO. Instead, both claim in ongoing lawsuits they were sexually assaulted by Epstein. While 91 deputies were paid a total of $128,136 to guard Epstein while he was working at the foundation, investigators said they found no evidence any law enforcement officer was bribed or coerced to look the other way. All right, well, Again, there's no evidence that points that way, right? At least that I've seen. But you mean to tell me of the 91 deputies, all of them were squeaky clean? None of them wanted to take that plata? Hey, come on, give me a break. We all know how people are. We all know people have bills, and we all know that salaries aren't always up to snuff. So while I don't know if anyone took a bribe to look the other way, I think a real look into that has to occur, right? In fact, they weren't in Epstein's office, agents said. Instead, the deputies stayed in the lobby of the suite. While Epstein's visitors were required to sign in, the logs were destroyed as part of the sheriff's regular records retention policies, agents said. Again, destroyed records, the missing emails, it's all coincidence. It's all part of policy. Sorry, I don't believe any of that. It's all part of your policy to cover up for your powerful friends. Is that what you mean? Because that's certainly what it looks like. Further, the deputies weren't paid directly, but rather by the sheriff's office after it received money from Epstein's nonprofit. Yeah, I could see that, but why is the nonprofit giving him money? And furthermore, was that Leon Black's money that Epstein was paying out? Again, I'm just asking these questions, folks, wondering what the investigators were doing. One of the most stunning parts of the report deals with Krischer's explanations about his role in the investigation, said Scarola, a former state prosecutor. In 2006, Palm Beach, police prepared documents to charge Epstein with lewd and lascivious molestation in connection with his molestation of a 14-year-old. They also said they had evidence to charge him with 4 counts of unwanted sexual activity with a minor. Those charges were based on allegations that he had penetrated 4 girls under the age of 18 with both his fingers and his penis. 2006 now, right? This is all information that the investigators had. This is all information that Barry Krischer had. But let's remember, only one witness was brought before the grand jury. And that witness had her credibility destroyed by none other than Barry Krischer and his office. But there's nothing to see here, folks. Everything was above board. The 5 teens were among 17 survivors identified by police. Eventually, dozens more would be discovered. Krischer told investigators he was troubled that the teens had been paid by Epstein, who lured the girls to his home for massages, which for most led to sexual assault. And we talked about this. That was all part of the plan. What, you don't think Epstein and his lawyers knew the laws? If we pay them, we can call them prostitutes. Therefore, we give ourselves some deniability and some cover. You do not have to be any sort of great investigator like Sherlock Holmes to figure this out. You don't even need to be Inspector Gadget. Under the state law at the time, it was a crime for teens to offer to commit or to engage in prostitution, lewdness, or assignation. To Krischer, that meant that the girls had committed the crime of prostitution. Krischer should be brought up on charges for that alone. These are children. They cannot be prostitutes. I don't understand how it's not much more clear than that. The law was changed in 2016 when state lawmakers agreed the minors, who legally cannot consent to sex, can't be charged with prostitution. Well, no shit, huh? What do you know? How about retroactively and going back and fixing that? Just like when they legalize marijuana, how they go in and expunge records? They have ways to do it. They just don't have the will, folks. While Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder pushed Krischer to charge Epstein with sex crimes, Krischer decided to take the case to the grand jury. Krischer indicated that he would have recommended taking the case in front of the grand jury to see how the young survivor presented in front of a jury and to also see what concerns the grand jury had with the case, so they could try and rebut those issues at trial, agents said. And that's pretty typical, right? They like to use the grand jury for that exact reason. But we all know that the saying goes, you can get a ham sandwich indicted in front of a grand jury. So what happened here? Why was Krischer so obstinate? Why didn't he want to bring more girls forward? Investigators noted that the grand jury was delayed several times. On at least one occasion, it was rescheduled after Epstein's lawyers gave Krischer copies of the teen's social media accounts, where they talked about drinking with boys and having sex. Oh, the humanity. Young girls talking about drinking and having sex with boys? What's next? You're going to tell me that astrophysicists are talking about space? During one of the delays, one of Krischer's prosecutors offered Epstein a plea deal. He would plead guilty to aggravated assault and be placed on probation for 3 years. Epstein rejected the offer. Finally, when the grand jury finally convened in June, Epstein was indicted on a single charge of solicitation of prostitution. Only one survivor was called to testify. Later, after an angry chief writer went to the FBI, federal prosecutors got involved. As part of the non-prosecution agreement, Krischer added a charge of solicitation of a minor for prostitution. Assistant U.S. Attorney Marie Villafana said the charge would force Epstein to register as a sex offender, something she described as essential to the non-prosecution agreement. Oh, yes, everywhere but New Mexico. And what did it really mean when he was a sex offender? Did that really stop him from doing anything, folks? Ask yourselves that. Was there a secret plea deal? Email uncovered by the Palm Beach Post showed Krischer was in contact with Epstein's lawyers about the controversial and once secret plea deal. But FDLE agents said they found no indication that Krischer had significant input into the signed federal non-prosecution agreement. No, plausible deniability given to him by his friends at the FDLE. Must be nice to be part of the big club, huh, folks? Ultimately, Epstein's defense counsel was allowed to choose the criminal statute for which he would be required to register as a sexual offender and that he would serve his sentence in the county jail. Not a split sentence in federal incarceration and state sanctions, agents wrote. Epstein's defense counsel was allowed to choose the criminal statute. That right there is all you need to hear. That's a mic drop moment, okay? I don't know anyone who's allowed to pick the criminal statute that they're allowed to serve under, unless we're talking about a mafioso inside of Mexico or something. Scarola said the FDLE investigation was a disappointment. He said he didn't believe rank corruption allowed Epstein to escape serious punishment. But I do think there was a gross dereliction of duty, he said. Those issues could have and have been addressed and should have been addressed. It is extremely disquieting that an investigation that took 2 years produced such a shallow examination, he said. The report raises more concerns than it ever attempted to answer. No doubt about it. We have more questions than answers always in this case, and hopefully with the trial we'll get some of those answers. But on the way there is still a lot more to uncover, folks, and I have a funny feeling we have not heard the end of the situation in Palm Beach and the ridiculous non-prosecution agreement that came right along with it. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. Alright, folks, you guys know the deal. I'll either be back later tonight or tomorrow morning, depending. Alright, everybody, I hope you all have a great day.
For all the night owls, late nighters, and sleepyheads out there, there's a solve for your morning blues. A delicious and savory breakfast from Mickey D's. Because if you can't be a morning person, at least you can even the odds.
Nothing gets you going like a classic sausage McMuffin with egg. Now get 2 for just $4.50. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Sometimes you just need a little extra chill. Take your chill to the next level with For Real shakes and smoothies. Visit forreal.com to find one near you and download the Shake Run game at the For Real machine.